Welcome to another edition of the Inspired Stories podcast, where leaders share their experiences so we can learn from their successes and be inspired by how they've overcome adversity. My name is Anthony Codaspoti, and today's guest is Dan Simpson. Simpson. Let's start that one over. Can't butcher your name in the first get-go. Welcome to another edition of the Inspired Stories podcast, where leaders share their experiences so we can learn from their successes and be inspired by how they've overcome adversity. My name is Anthony Codaspoti, and today's guest is Dan Simpson, CEO of Taziki's Mediterranean Cafe, a growing restaurant chain dedicated to offering fresh, healthy meals inspired by Mediterranean cuisine. They focus on quality ingredients, handcrafted dishes, and fostering community around a shared table. Now, under Dan's leadership, Taziki's has expanded to numerous locations and continues to bring people together through great food in a casual setting. Dan has been with the company since 2016, guiding innovation and business development. He has a strong background in culture building, technology, and market development. In addition, Dan earned his MBA from West Virginia University and has a BS in biology from Clearwater Christian College. He has also worked in both for-profit and nonprofit organizations, bringing a unique perspective to leading teams and cultivating positive work environments. Now, before we get into all that good stuff, today's episode is brought to you by my company, Add Back Benefits Agency, where we offer very specific and unique employee benefits that are both great for your team and fiscally optimized for your bottom line. Imagine being able to give your employees free access to doctors, therapists, and prescription medications. And here's the fun part. The program actually puts more money in your employees' pockets and the company's too. One recent client was able to increase net profits by $900 per employee per year. Now, results vary for each company. Some organizations may not be eligible. To find out if your company qualifies, contact us today at addbackbenefits.com. All right, back to our guest today, CEO of Taziki's Mediterranean Cafe, Dan Simpson. Thanks for making the time to share your story today.
Great to be here. So nice to meet you, Anthony, and great to be on the pod.
Yeah. So let's see, Dan, you've got a pretty interesting background before joining Taziki's. I see some work in healthcare. I see technology stops. Maybe pick one of those that was the most formidable for you and tell us about it.
Yeah, our careers are often winding roads and rarely straight lines, right? They often make sense maybe when we look back on them, but not so much when you're trying to, get out of college and blaze your trail. But yeah, I think back actually to the some of the healthcare jobs. I did some startup companies, and then I was invited by a friend to join this smaller organization. At the time, it's called AIM Healthcare, and they had a few hundred employees. And the biggest thing there, it ended up growing up to 1,000 employees nationwide presence and getting acquired by Optum or by United Healthcare. Now it's called Optum. And so it's a big player in the healthcare space, but I got to be there in the early days. And the cool thing then was, they hired me. I took a step backwards with pay and with position at the chance that I have a chance to help scale this company. And they're right. I showed ambition. I was curious. I learned very quickly. And before long, I was managing a team of 80 people. And the big thing that really is formative about that was I got to work directly with the investors and the C-suite. And what I learned there was basically, though, if I showed ambition and curiosity, as I said, that they would give me opportunities. And they put tremendous trust in me to be able to go start new divisions and broker multi-million-dollar deals. And I was so wet behind the ears. And they would do a great job with finding people that earned their trust and then put them in the deep end of the pool, support them. But they were not risk adverse. And that has taught me a lot about how to hire people and how to think about people, to try to surround yourself with people that you trust, that have a huge upside, and take some risks. It's okay to swing and miss and fail as long as you can fix it quickly. And so it really helped me not to be afraid of risk. Or there's a singer-songwriter, David Wilcox, I like, that has a saying about, you want to live your life where you swim along the shoreline where you are close enough to the shore to stay alive, but far enough to feel alive. And I think that applies to business too, right? Which is got to find that sweet spot between risk and reward.
And so this is, it sounds like, influenced the way, not only that you carry yourself, but the way that you approach cultivating talent within your organization today.
Yeah, absolutely. Like there is this idea of speed to trust, right? You want to, surround yourself with people that, in this case, now that I'm in the restaurant business, coming as an outsider, like you said, from healthcare, from technology, and some other industries, I found that it crosswalked very nicely into the restaurant space because the restaurant space is all of those things. Of course, there's a culinary chef-driven component, but it's operations, and now it's very tech enabled, and it's HR, and it's people building, and it's finance, and it's so many components like any business. And so what I look for is just talented people that are kindred in values, and then bestow upon them the deep end of the pool, and then just coach them along the way.
You mentioned that our careers, they're winding paths. We're just sort of trying to figure out, like, where do we land next right out of school? And then as you look back, you can kind of connect the dots a little bit better. As you kind of look back at your career, is there a common thread, through sort of these different opportunities that you've taken?
Yeah, there's a couple. I mean, I think the first one is the core of my value set is empathy and humanity. Like it's always been about people and projects that advance the common good and advance people getting opportunities. There's always been a bent towards like a purpose driven opportunity that's very people oriented. Everything, whether in every venture that I've been a part, and that's why the for profit and nonprofit, that tax status um, is a really less important, because the common thread between all of them was, were we a parasite and extracting from humanity, or were we actually adding value and bringing something good to the world? And so every project I've been a part of, that was key. I think the other dynamic is I've never been a person that had a clear like dream to launch of my own, right? I've though I've very much an idea person. I've never had an idea that I said, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to take my dream and launch it. And so everything I've done has been really finding other people who have dreams that are worthy of joining and help, but maybe they on their own don't know how to scale it, and applying my energy and my strategic thinking and culture building to their dream to help it grow. And I've always been very comfortable and in fact just really enjoyed about finding those people with big dreams that are worth joining and help them grow.
And so how did you find Taziki's, and what was it about their idea, 10 years ago that you got so excited to help grow?
Yeah, it was in each of the businesses that I've been part of, like if there was another thread that brought me to Taziki's, it was technology. Not a coder, not a technologist by trade, but as I got into every venture, I realized to scale more affordably, I had to learn how to leverage tech, right? Basic concept there. And so I ended up actually from those experiences launching a technology company, which had various different applications. And one of them ended up being in the sort of grocery store, restaurant hospitality space. Didn't ever imagine myself getting into the restaurant space. It
Which
was more of
company
a,
was this? Is this
yeah, that was To Go Technologies.
To Go Technologies? Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And its first iteration actually was a little bit more healthcare leaning around nutrition and wellness and reward programs, working with Blue Cross Blue Shield plans. We needed the other side of that network needed to be grocery stores and restaurants. And so that pushed me into that space from a nutritional angle. And I was then told by, at the time, the head of the National Restaurant Association, David Gilbert, who happened to live in Nashville where I live, and said, man, if you're going to go down this space, there's this guy named Michael Bodner, who is a whiz. He's the guy that understands integrations technology wise from systems into restaurant point of sales. Great. So we had lunch. We hit it off. He told me about his group called Fresh Hospitality, which was an incubator of aspiring restaurant brands. One of them was Taziki's. And we hit it off where he said, look, I'll make an investment in your company if you repurpose some of this tech and build a mobile ordering platform for my restaurant group, which included Taziki's. And eventually I ended up transitioning to go work with him at Fresh Hospitality to help him spin up new brands that, again, somebody else's dream, who needed help with scaling and building tech and building culture. And so I helped do that for a few smaller brands. And then he eventually said, why don't you come join the Taziki's group, the founder, not as a CEO, but as the chief innovation officer, which was just a fancy title for come be a consultant and help us figure out what the next 20 years looks like.
Yeah, I was
And
going to say
that was my
it's a
beginning.
little unusual. Sorry, you were the CIO for a couple of years, and then eventually, and I think this is what you're getting to. You transitioned into the CEO role, which on the surface sounds like a rather unusual career arc. I don't think I've come across a CIO or a CTO that has made that transition internally to the CEO. But as I hear your story, I think the details make a little bit more sense because you weren't a coder, right? You're not a programmer. You you kind of understood how to connect the dots on things, and I think that's where the skill set really lent itself well to you transitioning to that CEO role.
Yeah, exactly right. I think the Michael Bodner, who was the chairman of the board of Taziki's as well at that time, just he looked in and recognized that the founder Keith, the founding chef, was still very much involved, and the menu was excellent, and the brand had an amazing reputation. But we're moving into a world where more and more guests wanted to order not just dine in, but off premise, and that requires systems that they didn't have in place. Likewise, when you can have less conversations with your guests face to face, where you get to learn their names, where the kids go to school, and that leads to catering opportunities. Well, now you have to figure out a way to leverage collecting data to listen
Mhm.
carefully in these new ways to then interact with the guests in a way that is as close to face as you can. And so that was maybe the impetus. But when I got there, that was all true. When I got there, I recognized that there was more to do. That when Keith and I sat down and talked, we realized, there was opportunities to refresh and reposition the brand. And so it became sort of a marketing business development component of what we started working on. And then there was also a part with talent. I assessed very quickly that we had a lot of nice people that were loyal, but maybe the people that got us here weren't going to get us there. And so we need to start looking for the next level of talent you have to do this with any startup, right? But Taziki was still very much in a startup, very small nuclear mode, and needed to evolve the tech, the talent, the brand positioning to be ready to scale.
So, in a moment, I want to hear about what the Taziki's dining experience is like because I've not had the opportunity to be at one. But there's something you said that really caught my attention. How you don't have as much of that customer interaction that can lead to sort of catering opportunities. So you have to learn to listen to the data. How are you guys back in 2016, 17, 18 listening to data? What does that mean?
Yeah, back then, not so well, and not so much. I'd say over the years now, what that has evolved to looks like this. We now have a centralized database where we're taking all of our systems and integrated the data into one data lake, or they call this, and then a CDP layer, which is a customer data platform. And all that does is takes all these fragmented pieces of data from your mobile app and from your point of sale and from social media and third-party delivery and all of these different pieces, and it puts it all in one place. Almost imagine like a baseball card or a football card. It's got all your stats on the back, and it shows you've ordered, all these different restaurants and what you've ordered every time and the sequence of what you've ordered. And you're ordering for one, or you're ordering for a family. And so it's watching for patterns and it's watching for preferences. Even things like, do you more likely respond to an email we send you or a text? And do you more likely respond at 8 p.m. or 8 a.m.? And so all of that data in one place with some of those technologies allow us to pay attention. And then with that, then serve up a better interaction, say on the mobile app, where instead of just everyone getting the same homepage, if you've already disclosed to us that you love meat, we're going to show you about our lamb burger and our beef feast and our new lamb kebabs or lamb meatballs. But if you signal to us through your ordering behaviors that you order a lot of kids menu items, but only salads and vegetarian, then I'm not going to show, I want to honor that and not push the lamb meatballs on you. Right. So the same thing in my mind, it goes back to good tech really just empowers good empathy, right? It's good listening, good empathy of, if I care about you as a guest, then I would want to offer the things that would delight you. And I would never, I'm really not in the business of pushing things. I really want to be in the service business where I find out what you care about, what you don't care about, and I serve those preferences. And so the data just allows me to do that, even if you're not face to face with me.
Yeah, if I'm a vegetarian and you're pushing meat dishes on me, you feel it comes across as tone deaf.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I'm kind of curious where the state of that tech is today. I would imagine when it first started out, and correct me if I'm wrong, that it's very sort of like if-then sort of statements. If,
Yeah.
they order meat, show them this. If they order, 75% kids
Right.
meals, show them that. Has it progressed to the point where it's more, I don't know, AI driven, where there's more like intuition, where you don't have to give it like explicit rules, but it is sort of connecting the dots on its own?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked about that. It's been so fun, such a wild ride in just a short number of months to see how AI is starting to empower these types of interactions, this UI, UX. And it's really both, I'll start actually on our training side, right? Because we serve kind of two different groups of people. On one end, it's the thousands of people that we hire and train and empower to be successful. And training platforms used to be, manuals, and then they were online manuals essentially, and then they were just very static roadmaps. Well, we've now evolved to a training platform that there is a training path for every person, but now it is paying attention to both your knowledge and your confidence or lack thereof in every question. It's using AI to pay attention to what you got right or wrong to feedback training down the road. It's looking at other factors in the business to inform where maybe there were some knowledge gaps. There's this idea of like you have a learning curve. You also have a forgetting curve, which we all do, right? We don't remember everything we've learned. And so the AI is helping us to create custom training paths for each individual that, again, pays attention not only to what they learn and what they forget, but also it measures things like, if you get it right and you're confident in your score, if you show confidence, that's great.
How does it measure confidence? It just like speed to answer?
In every question, it's one of the questions that it asks. It asks about what is the answer and what is your confidence level, like 1 through 5. And so it's monitoring things that are helpful. Ideally, you have people that get it right and they're high in their confidence. What you watch out for is the people that are high in their confidence, but they're getting it wrong. They're dangerous. But likewise, there's also a type of individual that gets it right, but their confidence is low, right? And so you can mentor and coach that person up. It's not a function of capability or aptitude. It's literally a function of more personal confidence and encouraging them, giving them opportunities to lead and to build their confidence because their knowledge is already solid. So, but AI is helping us make all of those interactions app-based, real-time, personalized, dynamic with that person. Other things like it used to be, you could only ask the manager. You had to call someone at the corporate office to ask a question. Now you can go to an app, into the Discover function, and ask it anything about anything. How do you make the hummus? And it'll generate a video for you. So you don't have to like go into a catalog of training. Now it's ask it anything.
It generates the video on the fly? No,
it will produce. It will basically yield. It will share the video.
Yeah,
but
here's the video that you.
It's taking many what used to just be isolated curriculum, and now it's making that. Now it can tap into any component of curriculum and serve up a specific answer to a specific question. So those are some examples on the staff side. On the customer side, we're actually getting ready in just the next few months. In fact, at our upcoming TazCon, our conference where we gather the whole company together, which will be happening in middle of September, we're going to be announcing a new mobile app and web ordering platform. And so stay tuned. But this does have personalization, customization, and some AI-driven components where it is paying attention to the guests' behaviors instead of us pushing generic, they say like spray and pray marketing approach, where you're just pushing out things. Instead, now it's going to be listening and watching what the guest does, and then responding, not just based on just their patterns, but also looking with AI to then recommend things to an engine that pays attention to what other lookalike customers might enjoy. And so there's, there not just that, but like I mentioned before, this idea of also communicating the message at the time and in the format they like. Do they prefer text? Do they prefer email in morning or night? So paying attention to what the guests want and trying to serve them as best we can.
That's really interesting. I'm going to guess that there's some combination of using third-party tools and then you guys kind of layering in your own customization. This isn't, I mean, you're not a tech company. It
Right.
doesn't make sense for you guys to home grow all of this stuff.
Yeah, that's right. It's a combination of figuring out the right tech partners that exist in the space. We've had by and large, we've had a bias toward partnering with companies that are sort of where we are as a company. And so for the most part, that means not going with 800-pound gorilla in the industry, but going with someone that's also not just an upstart, but someone that's emerging in their presence in the industry. And then we form a partnership with them where they're really happy to have us. We're really to have them. And then we have a dialogue where we can help inform some of their tech development. So yeah, we're not trying to code our own software, but we particularly want to work with companies that genuinely want to listen and collaborate on something that is a win-win for both of us.
That makes a lot of sense. If you guys are comparable sizes on similar trajectories, it's going to feel more like you're equals. They're going to hear your voice. You're going to get some of the features that you're asking for, which I think is really important, especially with like cutting edge tech like we're talking about.
Yeah, that's right. So it's been fun. Like there's companies like Square Point of Sale, which is a very well-known company, but in the enterprise restaurant space, they're a smaller player. We've been lockstep with them for the last 5 years to help them develop some new software that meets our needs, and we're on their development kind of guidance board to be able to inform what they're doing and make sure that it works for us and also helps them as they grow into the space, for an
So
example.
and when I say we, it's the royal we, I got really excited about talking about the tech. And so we got sidelined for a second. I want to come back to what the actual customer experience is. What is a Taziki's restaurant? I've never been before. I walk in, what do I see, smell, taste, hear?
Yeah. So love it. One thing in the general sense is that Taziki's is really like an elevated fast casual experience, right? Which really differentiates us from if you look at the spectrum of restaurant options today, you have on one side, fast food, which is largely drive-through driven, but it's all optimized for speed. So it's lower price items that are often not high ingredients or made scratch. And there's just about get it in, get it out as fast as possible. On the other extreme, obviously you have fine dining, which will be typically more of a farm to table and, white tablecloth and lots of attention. In the middle is the fast casual space, which has been the darling of the industry for more than a decade now. But even inside of that, there's still a lot of people that are moving towards kiosks, again, optimizing for speed and less human interaction, or even just cheaper building materials, right? They're trying to crank out as many units as they can. And so there's a lot of plastic and a lot of materials that don't signal come and stay in a comfortable space. So with that as context, you walk into a Taziki's, and first of all, there many times there'd be like as our Greek founding, a white building with our blue Taziki sign, welcoming you in with some potted plants outside with olive trees or other plants herbs as you enter. And you walk in, you're going to notice that the store is bright white. There is accented by salty dog blue, and there's crafted basket lights hanging over a community table. And then there's comfortable seating. There's an assortment of banquettes and 2 tops and 4 tops around the restaurant. There are beautiful photographs all around the restaurant. And these are actually taken by our founder in his multiple trips to Greece and Turkey and places around the Mediterranean. And they all tell a story. And they're not just places, but they also tell a story of ingredients. Like we have direct partnerships in the Mediterranean where we get all of our lemon juice from. And I visited these farmers, and it's our lemon juice is one of the things that makes our cooking and our flavors really unique and special. We also import, our olive oil. Olive oil is a key ingredient in the Mediterranean diet, and so we have an assortment of things that we import directly from Greece and the Mediterranean. And you can see photographs of those farms and farmers and ingredients on the wall. Our salt, our Mediterranean sea salt, is from this beautiful place called Petrus. You can, if you could see far enough, you'd be looking across to Italy. But it's a beautiful area where all of the sea salt is harvested, and we have that available in our restaurants, actually on the table as well. So we make it to be an immersive experience. When you walk in, though, as a guest, you're going to be greeted by a menu stand that walk you through our salads and our bowls and our gyros and our feast. And you can level it up with a glass of red or white wine, and some baklava for dessert. But you're like fast casual tradition. You'll stand in line and then be greeted by a cashier who will walk you through the menu, and then when you sit, we'll bring out your meal. Throughout the meal, we will refill your drinks, and you can add anything during the meal, and then we'll bust the table at the end. So once you stand in line to place your order, after that point, it's really full service, and we want to make sure that our guests are busy, have places to go. We want to make sure that we make that be as a comfortable experience as possible.
Okay, so I got to call something out here because I did a little bit of research, a few weeks ago leading up to this interview, and I didn't remember there being bowls. Is this a mistake on my part? Did I miss that?
No. Well, yeah. Thanks so much. Bowls are new. They're new a week and 2 days in that we've launched our first bowls program. It's actually to have a little fun with bowls. We adopted the Greek word for bowls, which is kypalos. And kypalos. So kypalos is the way to go. It is. We started with three bowls. Where it's both chef curated and also collaborative with the guests. So you get to build your own bowl. So you either choose quinoa or rice or pasta as your base, and then there is a grilled vegetable medley, and then you choose whatever protein. There's chicken kebabs or grilled chicken, salmon, grilled shrimp, beef, etc. There's falafel. There's a variety of proteins on top, and then it's topped, and it's a perfect blend. We look at the space of the bowls, and there's some that are you walk into a restaurant and a scoop and serve, and they present you with 100 degrees and say guess, right? And I think that sort of decision fatigue is, though the flavors are amazing, it's a little bit too much for a lot of people. On the other side is restaurants that basically make a bowl where you don't get to choose anything. So we've tried to strike the middle path, whereby it's all chef design with these three basic options. We know that they're all these 24 different options are going to taste amazing, and but the guest gets to collaborate on the base and on the protein.
So we're a week and 2 days into this as we record at the end of August 2025. Is it too early to tell how it's been received? Do you have any data on that?
Yeah, I was just looking at the data this morning. Actually, this is our most successful limited time offer we've ever done in 27 years. It's selling great. Guests love it. Our staff are having fun with the name. The guests are having fun learning a new vocabulary word, and they're coming back for more. So yeah, we're really thrilled. With any luck, probably too soon to make a formal announcement. With any luck, this will end up being a permanent menu item that will feature starting next year.
Okay, I was giving you my follow-up question because you called it a limited time, but if consumers demand it, there's a possibility this could stick around.
Yeah, it's been really fun. Our founder Keith is I joke, but I'm serious when I say he has a certain kind of genius in the kitchen, and our name, in fact, is the first clue. If you look at the word Taziki's, if you know, you might be like, wait, that's not how you spell it. You spell it Tzatzikis. What happened to these two other letters? Well, when they chose that name to launch the first restaurant, they said, it's a little bit of a fussy, complicated name. Let's make the name be like the menu, which is more approachable. Let's drop two letters and make it be more readable, roll off the tongue a little easier. And then Keith took the same approach with the menu. He kind of deconstructed all these ingredients that he found across Greece and the Mediterranean and said, let's reconstruct them in a way that feels more familiar. And it really works. Our guests say, man, they come in and they eat so well, and yet as they leave full but still feeling light. And they were exposed to so many ingredients that were new, but also so many they're comfortable. It's in some ways it's meat and rice and potatoes and salad, right? And just with some different ingredients in there.
Yeah. And the other thing that I think is fun, and I don't see this in a lot of fast casual environments, is that you've got wine available. Right. And so a couple of, parents or, just grown-ups out for an evening and they want to have a drink with their meal and, they don't want to, fork out the cash for a fine dining kind of environment. You sort of bring all those elements together here for them.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's part of that elevated experience. We want it to be perfect for a date night. We know that a lot of times, again, if you're not just eating at home, which I still love to cook at home, or you're not just eating as a pure utility, you're stuck at work and you need to order DoorDash Drive, which by the way, you can do through our app that we partner with them and they deliver for us through our own app. Then you want to go for an experience of some kind, right? You want it to be comfortable. Like we don't have any TVs, excuse me. We don't have TVs. We don't have distractions. We want it to be a place where you can gather, you can enjoy the meal. But we recognize that usually when people break bread and enjoy meals, you're either celebrating something or commiserating something. It's either been a hard day, a hard week, a hard season, and food is comfort. And we gather together to do that with people. Or best case is someone got engaged, someone got a promotion, someone's kid got into college. Like these are these happy moments. And so in either case, having a glass of wine at the table and the best moments are the hardest moments. It is such a key part of breaking bread around a table together.
That's great. I want to talk a little bit about, well, first of all, how many locations do you guys have?
We just opened our 109th location this week. So we've got, I think, 5 more that are scheduled to open in 2025.
And is this all franchises, or we got corporate owned locations? What's the balance here?
Yeah, the first thing I'll say is like in all cases, they're partners, right? And so we're always looking for good people and partners. But that said, there are 2 different kinds of partners. We have about 60% are franchise partners where they are 100% owners and they bring the Mediterranean through Taziki's to their community. And we partner with them on that. The other ones are company joint ventures where we have a local operating partner that we sponsor essentially and work with. And we have 8 of those markets. And that represents about 40% of our units. So it's 60-40.
What does that mean? A company joint venture where you've got a local partner?
Yeah. And so it's in some restaurant models, they set up a traditional org chart where you've got your CEO and your vice presidents that and everything is a top down organization where everyone in the organization below is an employee. End of story. Right. And they might get a good paycheck and they might get good benefits, but that's it. They're not partners, they're employees. We really want to have partners, not employees. And so when we launch, like we just launched a new market a year ago in St. Louis. And we found a gentleman that's from there, lived there, been successful in launching other brands, who's ready for his next adventure. And so instead of just hiring him as the local manager or market leader, we partner with him. So he is a part owner and has equity in that market along with us. And so we fund most of it. He funds part of it. Okay. And so that means we're joined at the hip. And when there is profitability and distributions, then he gets his portion pro rata.
Wow, that's really interesting. I don't think I've come across that model in the franchise world. This probably isn't entirely unique, but unusual.
Yeah, it's kind of like our fast casual format. It also is a hybrid and elevated in a sense. It goes back to like our belief in this is not just about units and unit economics and profitability, but about people and partnerships. So we, for example, let me give you an example. There's in the national market where I live, we hired at an entry level position a gentleman by the name of Armando Perez, and he worked his way up to become a manager of one store. And now he manages all 13 locations here, and has also along the way become an equity holder and an owner. And so this is he's an immigrant from Venezuela. He's a huge success story. He's now a leader of leaders. And those kinds of stories to me are super encouraging. A big reason why I stay invigorated about this brand is we could make that true for another 100 franchise partners and another 100 local operating partners, where it's not just a hired gun. but it could change his life and his family's life. And so that's a wonderful gift. He works really hard and has earned it. So don't misunderstand. But we also like to make sure it's a win-win and rewarding for him and his family as well.
I love that. That's so cool. Um, that kind of leads me into a question that I almost hesitate to ask because I don't like to get political on the show, but I hear a lot in the media about the impact of tariffs on small business, impact of immigration enforcement in certain industries, and I'm always curious, how much does the media hype meet what's really going on for businesses, small businesses? And so I'm kind of curious to hear, Dan, from your point of view, the stuff that I'm hearing on the news, is it really impacting you guys?
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for asking that. One thing I think I'll start by saying, like, I think when there's a leader, an important thing is to not just be a hype man. And so I tried to be pretty true to the idea of a SWOT analysis, which means, yeah, you do celebrate the strengths and the successes, but you're equally quick to be courageous about the weaknesses, the opportunities that you've maybe yet to achieve, and the threats. And I think to be a good leader, you got to be balanced and unafraid of addressing all four parts of that. And so therefore, talking about, we're if you ask our team, I'm pretty shrewd about where we suck and really trying to confront our weaknesses. But and we don't like to make a lot of excuses. But you have to look at the threat. And you're asking about something. So what are the external threats that impact a business? So yeah, I mean, I'll say, first of all, the news is certainly more hyped than the reality. Number one. Number two is, people and local economies and team members are way more resilient than, I say, temporary crisis. Right. And so one thing I've learned, whether through the pandemic or through some of the like Black Lives Matters protests, which impacted a lot of the markets where we have restaurants, or the Great Resignation, and now some external threats. I've been so thrilled with how resilient people are, both our customers and our staff. Now, that said, right now, this year to date, I just had a board meeting where we talked about some of these things. And yes, inflationary pressures are real, meaning the cost of goods for us to buy our ingredients, whether, from local farmers, we get our lamb from Michigan, all of our produce is local, our chicken is all domestic, like American farmers, right? All of those costs for us are all up. At the same time, you normally would look at those costs and you would do a minor price increase to offset that. But right now, you're watching those inflationary pressures hit consumers to where their spend away from home is down. And so they're a little bit more cautious of spending. So it really is a time where we can't right now pass on price increases. And we've not taken any prices this year, no price increases. So we're absorbing this, which is putting a lot of strain and limiting our ability to keep reinvesting into the business as much as we would like. So yeah, so inflation is real. The tariff pressures are absolutely real. And you could think like, well, how much? 10%, 20%? Well, single digit percentages really impact the restaurant business. But I'd say the other dynamic is on the labor side or the workforce front. And it's no secret at all that farm to table, whether we're talking about agricultural picking in the picking seasons or all the way to the restaurant business, that there are a lot of individuals, this is their first job, or if they're immigrants, this might be one of their early jobs. And the restaurant business has a lot of individuals that are some of our best workers, been with us a long time. And certainly this year, there's been new pressures that we've not experienced in the past, as far as people that have citizenship or had a work visa or had a student visa or they had temporary protective status. They have a legal status, but where we've lost a lot of those individuals, or they are experiencing a lot of pressure because their statuses have been changed or threatened to be changed. And so there is a new dynamic that there's a lot of fear, and that's led to people leaving. So
not just people who are illegal immigrants, but people who are here legally. They've got the documentation, absolutely. And those folks are having their status changed, feeling pressure to leave.
That's right.
Okay.
So in those moments, my first response was I hit the road and went to go visit some of our key markets and heard people's stories. And they got to tell me where they walked from, countries they walked from because they were being oppressed because of their faith, or being oppressed because of local gangs, or they were pursuing the American dream. And most, maybe people don't recognize, but most states and most businesses have to run all their employees through a program called E-Verify to confirm that they have legal status. And so, my first instinct is to hear people's stories, to empathize, and try to do what we can to educate them about these changing dynamics, to let them know that we're family and you've been with us for a long time. So we're going to do what we can to support you through this. And then do what we can to try to advocate for the people making decisions, that they may not realize that the impact this is having on local businesses.
What does that last part mean?
Well, for instance, in the next couple of weeks, I'm really thrilled to be able to go to DC. Going to have an opportunity with an advocacy group to go meet with some congressional delegates, and the plan is some folks from the White House as well, and to share some facts, some data, some stories. The gentleman I mentioned before, Armando Perez, who now runs the national market, he literally just in the first quarter of this year just became a U.S. citizen, a naturalized U.S. citizen, and it was one of my most proud moments of this year was to see his story. He was here, he had legal status, but it was a student visa and a work visa and asylum visa. And he became a full U.S. citizen. And so my goal in going to DC is to tell these stories. These are success stories of people that, they go to church, they're plugged in their kids' schools, they're hardest working leaders that I would follow into battle. And these are my neighbors and fellow citizens. And so my goal would be to tell those stories and to create a path where maybe companies like ours can have skin in the game and have like a company sponsored work visas, and say, look, we will take some ownership of these individuals. They worked with us for a long time. If there is concern about their status being continued, let us take some responsibility. This is very common in the agricultural space. I'd love to see it to be true in the restaurant and hospitality space.
So educate me on that a little bit. So there are special work visas that exist for international workers who have come here to help work on farms. How does that process work? How would the translation work in the restaurant environment?
Yeah, it's essentially businesses determine what their demand is for labor. They say, well, I've got, in the agricultural space, might be out west, where they determine we have, this many crops that need to be picked. They go through a process of putting out applications for local people to accept those jobs. They fill, say, 50% of them. They can illustrate that there, in fact, is a gap, a need for labor. So there is not an elimination of an American job or domestic job that is going to be impacted. And then with that remaining need, they can offer company-sponsored visas. Those are seasonal visas that are, again, for agricultural picking. But there's many other visas. There's student visas. There's visas for rock stars that are from other countries that come to America, and to play here, they have to have a visa. There's many kinds of visas that are many for temporary, aligned with education, or aligned with a job. And in this case, I think we can clearly illustrate that we have more jobs than we have applicants. And we can also illustrate that we have many people that have worked with us that are here legally, and they're contributing to society, paying their taxes, and are key leadership members in our team, and that we would be willing to have skin in the game as far as a company sponsored program, just like they have in the ag world.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, Dan, you're not going there in a protest capacity. You haven't made up your signs. You're not marching on Capitol Hill or one of the monuments or something. You're meeting with key decision makers to say, right, hey, here's what's going on. Here's how it's affecting us. Here's how it's affecting small businesses and, on Main Street and, real town USA. And, can we come up with some solutions together?
Yeah. And that's right. There's this is one of the topics that I think most people, if you got most Americans and even most legislators in the room, we would have agreement on 95% of this whole topic. And so let's start there. Let's start. Of course, we need strong borders. Of course, we need to deal with anyone who has committed any crimes, but that would be true of anybody in their country, but including anyone who came from another country. And then we need to determine what America has always been, which is a land where people pursue their dreams legally, in partnership with schools or with companies. And that's the type of common sense solution I would love to see. And rather than waiting around for someone else to go, I'm really thrilled at the opportunity to go in a few weeks and see if we can win any hearts and minds and provide a solution that feels like not a compromise, but truly a win-win.
Yeah. Well, I wish you well, and we'll have to check back in with you to get some updates. I want to shift gears, Dan, and maybe talk about a serious challenge that you have overcome, something personal or professional. How did you get through that? What did you learn?
Yeah, so I actually want to go back. There's so many, honestly. It could be a whole podcast just about the missteps. I like to say, bad choices make good stories, but sometimes it's not a function of bad choices. It's a function of your own like personal development. And one that comes to mind is actually going back to the questions you were asking before about like, how did I get into this job? And when I was asked to come join Keith, the founder of Taziki's, to help him put together a plan for the future, that was it. At that time, up until that time, I had done a series of 2 to 6 year projects. And again, I'd find someone that had a dream and help them scale it. And then I would hand it off to someone else to kind of manage it and move on to the next thing. And I really thought that's what I would do for forever. Part of that is I also really thought, boy, I'm a really good wingman, and I'm my ego's not in the way, and I can put all my energy into people and scaling. And so sometimes we typecast ourselves into these buckets. And so, when the day came along where I thought I was at the end of my project with Taziki's, really thrilled with the progress we were making and the plan, the vision we had set out. And when I sat down with the board at that time, and they essentially said, "We love what you've done, but it's time for us to transition to the next CEO." And I said, "Great, who is it? Let me start the transition process." And they're like, "It's you. You're already making progress. You're already harmonizing with the founder. You're already doing the things we would want somebody to do. And yes, you've led other companies and other ventures, and not quite like this. And no, you're not a restaurant guy by decades of trade. But we need leadership of a different kind right now." And so, on one hand, of course, that's a very flattering moment, right? But I'll be honest.
This doesn't sound like a hardship. This doesn't sound like a struggle.
Well, but I'll be honest and say, like, I was thrilled at the opportunity, but I also knew that when you're coming from the outside of an industry, there's a lot of stripes to earn, and there's a lot of a sense of credibility that you typically only earn one way, and that is you start at the bottom and you work for decades to get up to this place, and it's the only way apparently to get there. And so I knew that. I was pragmatic about that. What I would say is I went home, I probably had 2 weeks where I barely slept. I felt incredibly anxious. I think that the right term is imposter syndrome, right? Mm-hmm. Where when I evaluated, I knew my skills, but I also knew that I didn't come for this industry. And while it was one thing to join alongside of the founder and be an advisor and a consultant, and that part was easy, but the moment they said, "Great, you're going to be in charge of executing this," I knew that I had gaps. I knew that I would have to earn credibility from some people that only saw it to be earned one way, and that would only come through time. I knew it had naysayers. I also knew that the restaurant leaders, for the most part, they were into sales and food and profits and the building being clean, and that was it. But they weren't necessarily into all the things that I really found to be very important, like we needed good tech and good data. We needed to be equally passionate about our staff and empowering them with great training, and we need to listen to them. So I brought the kind of other side of the business to the table, and I knew that I would have to win hearts and minds. I knew this was a big challenge. And it took me probably about 2 weeks, and I talked to some mentors, and they're like, "Dan, you want to do startup projects and consulting for, your whole life? What if this is an opportunity to deepen yourself and deepen your work and really get to know these people and really invest in them? What if you actually could see this through? Yeah, there's risk. Because what if you're a fraud? What if you can't do it? What if you're actually just a guy that comes up with ideas and can't execute them? So you have to face all those hard facts if you're a person that's reflective. And so it was a hard couple of weeks because I didn't want to just skip over it or just grab a hold of it. I wanted to reflect. And when I got through that on the other side, I still, fear is not something that you have or don't have. As a friend of mine used to say, fear is really tall and really wide. But when you press into it, you find it's really thin. And so it's the exercise of pushing up against the thing that a voice in your head says, I don't know I can do this, and maybe I can't do this. And it's the exercise of pushing through it that you actually find the antidote to fear. And it's not fearless. It's just pushing through the fear that you find that's where action is, and that's where empowerment is. And then you have to earn your successes and earn your reputation. So I'm so glad I said yes. It's been a challenging ride because a few years in, COVID hit us. And I had to navigate through deconstructing the business and putting it back together through some challenging time. But it's actually been a fun ride. So yeah, I'd say that was a huge, double whammy challenges. One is more a personal crisis. The other one was more of a, the crisis of the pandemic.
Let's kind of deconstruct this a little bit, because you said quite a few interesting things. Originally you had yourself sort of typecast as this wingman, right? So somebody else's idea, I come in and I've got the tools and the ideas to kind of help elevate it and grow it, and that's all good, and I feel comfortable there. Sure. And even with those successes that you've had, there's a lot of this imposter syndrome that's sort of like, running in the background there, like, maybe I'm not the guy for this. Maybe I can't do that. And I hear this so much, and I'm affected by it myself on a regular basis. So it's interesting to me that you took all this time to reflect, and it wasn't that you got to a place of no more fear. It was, the fear is there and I'm going to do it anyways. I'm going to do it scared. Right. And I just had a conversation earlier this week with one of my guests, and I'm going to sort of butcher what she said, but it was, fear can either paralyze you or it can motivate you.
Love it.
And it sounds, you went through that period of a couple of weeks where you're thinking about it. Paralyzing is probably a strong word. You weren't paralyzing, you were contemplating, right? But you eventually got to the point where this was, I'm going to do this. I got to find out. Is this a chance for me to grow? And growth is uncomfortable, and I acknowledge that, or am I going to fall on my face?
Right.
And so then you get you get there, and things are going well for a few years, and then you hit COVID. And so tell us about that experience.
Yeah, it was a really invigorating experience, right? On a personal level, I've been traveling, nonstop, and it was the first time in decades that I slept in my own bed and got to watch my grass grow. I mean, it was just a bizarre life experience. I actually got COVID very early and had 104 fever, and so I was personally hit by it like in March of that year early, and so I felt it personally. I felt the downside of it, that it was real and it was impacting me. I felt the upside that I could be in my own bed and that the world might look different moving forward. And maybe there's new ways we could work and not have to travel all the time. But then then confronting the business side of it, which was, we learned this is where the entrepreneurial spirit is amazing, right? I sent out an email pretty early on that was entitled something like, break all the rules. Right? We're a franchise company. We have agreements with our franchise partners and with our operating partners. We have a lot of guidelines and standards, and basically said, screw it. In a time like this, we don't know what's happening, what's going to happen next. Let's trust each other, and let's lean on our ingenuity to serve our staff, keep them employed, and serve our guests in creative ways. And by breaking away the pressure of all these rules, we found people did amazing things. Like they created whole new programs without any guidance from us, from the corporate office, about, creating delivery programs that would go feed entire communities and do community deliveries for family meals. We had groups that basically kind of turned into a butcher shop. They had butcher skills, and they had community that they had shortages, but we had access to all this beef and chicken and lamb and steak and whatever. And so we were able to come up with new programs to provide even, whole muscle products out to people. We partnered with other businesses that were deeply affected, whether they were cupcake companies, or other local businesses that lost their ability to reach their guests. And so it was so fun. I mean, this is the thing: is people look back and say, wasn't it terrible? Honestly, it was invigorating because we got to a place where we broke all the rules. We took what was a growing, bloating, maybe set of rules and menu, and we shrunk it down to an express menu, the smallest menu we've ever had. And our sales didn't barely go down. We
Wow.
realized that all this belief that we have to have this huge menu to survive was actually not true. So it freed us up from some limited beliefs. It opened up our ingenuity. It built pathways of trust with our partners. And it let us focus on the most important thing, which was how do we keep our staff employed and be a secure employer for them? And then how do we go to great lengths? Each community might be slightly different. Go to great lengths to listen and serve, because this is what hospitality is all about.
So as you guys kind of got through the COVID tunnel and things,
Yeah.
returned to some sense of normalcy,
Yeah.
did you keep any of the sort of experimental things that you guys have been trying?
Yeah, we did. I mean, it definitely informed us coming around a much smaller nucleus of core menu items. And we didn't return back to this large ballooned menu. We said from now on, we're going to be really, really careful about adding things that are fill a need for our guests, or that are real value to our guests. But let's beware of that scope creep. Very common challenge for many businesses. We also embrace this idea of optimizing all of our kitchen procedures to make it easier for our staff to run the restaurants. Right? We learned, if you're sometimes not by making people unemployed, but by people becoming sick, your staff would get cut in half, and you now only have 4 people to run the shift instead of 8. So we learned, well, we need to cross train everybody so they can have more agile choreography. So it changed the way we think about hiring a team of A players who are cross trained kind of ninjas, rather than having such broad teams or just maybe so isolated in their particular roles. And then make it easier. We started to ask them different questions about how do we make it easier for them to execute the restaurant. Restaurant's a hard business, no matter what. It's a real hard business to execute. So we started to have more empathy around how do we make it easier in our tech, in our processes, and our equipment, et cetera. And we made changes around that. So it freed up lots of changes, and thinking in new ways that, again, got us right back to the core, which is why are we in this business, right?
Oh.
If it's just making food, that's just the manufacturing of business where you're just taking in ingredients, you're adding a recipe, and you're having some output. There's not any romance or any heart in that. And so really for us, it's about the staff, giving them opportunities and careers. Come for a job, stay for a career, but also for our communities. And we really do, we want to serve them, which means we have to listen to what they want and need. And so it's been fun to kind of find that North Star again.
That's pretty cool. Dan, I've just got one more question for you. But before I ask it, I want to do 2 things. First, I'm going to invite everybody listening to pause just for a second. Go ahead and open up your podcast app, follow us, like us, leave a comment, leave a review, a rating. That helps a lot of other people find the show. And it's really the kindest thing that you could do for this program. I also want to let people know how to get in touch with you or the brand. If they want more information, they want to just reach out to you and have a conversation. How do folks do that?
Yeah, and probably the best way is if you go to just tazikis.com, to our core website. You can learn about the brand. If you're interested in bringing the Mediterranean Tazikis to your community, you can do that right through. There's a web page there that you can get access to that. Or if there's a location near you or one coming near you, and then down below you can see there's a section about our team. You can also find me on LinkedIn and reach out that way. But we'd love to hear from you, whether you're in a community that already knows and loves the brand, or you're interested in maybe being part of our future together.
Great. We'll make sure we include links to that in the show notes for everybody. Dan, last question for you. A year from now, you and I reconnect and you are really excited. You're fist pumping in the air. You're celebrating something big. What's that big thing you're celebrating 1 year from now?
First of all, I gotta say 2 things. One is just really basic, and that is, like with any brand with multiple partners and multiple locations, winning is disproportionate. Everyone doesn't win at the same levels. And so I'd say in a year from now, the thing I'd be most excited about is, look, all of our partners are are winning at the highest level. We've gone from where we are all, playoff to Super Bowl, good to great, and it's impacting all of our partners and all of our locations. And so you always have, in any business, you always have your bottom quartile that for whatever reason struggles to win at the next level. And so we spend a lot of time with leave no store behind and make sure that all of our team members are winning at the highest levels. That'd be very basic, but very, very wholesome for all of us. And then the last piece, I'll harken back to this advocacy work around immigration. And I would love to see in a year from now that there's a successful new partnership that both the government stakeholders and business community have come together and found a win-win solution to put some of this rhetoric behind us and make sure that the American dream is alive and well all across America.
Good luck to you on that. And we'll check back in to see how that's going. Dan Simpson from Taziki's. Want to be the first to thank you for sharing both your time and your story with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's been great.
Folks, that's a wrap on another episode of the Inspired Stories podcast. Thanks for learning with us today.